Hi, I'm Deb Beroset. I'm the founder of Moxie Creative Consulting and the Influence Stylist. And I'm really excited to have with me here today my friend and former colleague, Gary John Bishop, who has written this book, Unfuck Yourself, Get Out of Your Head and Into Your Life. And let me just give you a quick little intro, Gary. All right. So Gary started out. Thanks for being here, Gary.
You're welcome. By the way, I'm so awesome to be with you.
Yeah, this is so cool. So Gary self-published this book. He started out with a run of 2,000 copies, and within 5 months had sold about 30,000 copies. He was quickly scooped up by a major publisher, and now his book has sold upwards of 400,000 copies around the world. It's an international bestseller in, 18 countries or so. So Gary's going to share with us, how did this happen? How did this happen? And, what everybody wants to know is, how could I do that? I mean, let's just be real. That's the first thought that my audience is going to have, in addition to being really happy for you, Gary. So, just can you, first of all, just tell us a little bit about this wild and crazy journey of yours? Yeah. And congratulations.
Yeah, it's awesome. I would love to say that, it was a master plan of mine, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to say I had this brilliant strategy to how to get to the top of the mountain. But it really just came down to my willingness to keep climbing. There was no magic ingredient. There was a lot of mistakes made, and there was a lot of desperation in that climb. And I'm not even at the top of the mountain. I'm just kind of hovering around the top of this particular one. There's lots of other mountain ranges, of course.
Sure.
But it wasn't like filled with, positivity and good vibes and, being centered in the universe. And I was like, holy shit, what am I doing? I've screwed this up. And, and it wasn't lighthearted either. I mean, it was heavy going, not just when the book came out, but even just in the writing of this book. There was like self-doubt and resignation and anger and frustration and, the overwhelming experience that I just want to give up, or I can't do it, So I'm not one of these people who is, I think there are people who are gifted at something, like they have something they've nurtured over time that they just now express that thing eloquently and beautifully and masterfully. That's not me. I'm the blood and snot guy. I'm like, like I got mud in my eyeball and I've sprained my ankle, and it's not, this shit's not easy for me. But so what? Okay, it's not easy. What else was I gonna do? Not do it. And I think that's one of the things I kept coming back to. I can either do this or not do it.
Yeah.
And I just kept bringing myself to doing it and to writing it and putting it out there and making mistakes and failing. And, but the mere, or the action of doing that, the engaging with something in that way, good things are going to come. It's just that, am I aware of them? Do I see them? Do I jump on them? Do I get them for all they're worth? And crappy stuff happened too, but that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah. Well, so Gary, before you even, just sitting down and beginning the writing of a book is a huge deal, right?
Yeah.
So many people get stuck up in here before butt gets applied to chair and fingers to keyboard. So
right.
What was it for you? Like, what was the vision? What were you imagining? What were you committed to when you actually began that work?
Really simple. That whatever I was going to write, I would buy it. And there's nothing fancy about it. It's like reading this right now. Am I entertained? Am I informed? Does this make me think? And being okay with that, not trusting it or some bullshit like that, which is a little too airy-fairy for me, but just being okay with that. Like, I actually think this is good. And because that's all you really can do. You can't, if you start writing the book with the reviews in mind, you're already screwed. You're already screwed. You're done. Just forget it. You should go work in, Starbucks or something. It's not going to work, right? You got to write it from the perspective of, does this appeal to me? And the more I wrote it, the more it appealed to me. And then for me, I didn't want to say anything too complex. Why? Because I don't like reading complex shit. So I'd much rather read something that knocks me out. So the more I kind of started to connect with what appealed to me and write that and write that and write that. And, someone asked me, like about the kind of process of writing a book, which I'm a complete novice at. But I really got that there's no right way to do it. I found my experience of writing a book was more about what I took out than what I put into it.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, that's stupid, or let me take that out, and I conflicts with it. I mean, I spent probably just as much time taking stuff out of that thing as I did putting it into it. Wow. And I find as if that worked well for me. But you can turn writing a book into a head game, or you can turn it into a habit. So like, you're either going to write it, or you're going to get fucked up about writing it. I'd rather just write it.
I think most of us would prefer that route. Yeah. And yet people get stopped, right? I mean, one of the things that I'm curious about, Gary, is, in my work with folks, sometimes we have to really have them look at, working on having their actual voice expressed versus who they think they should be sounding like, or, mimicking somebody else, or just feeling like they have to be a certain way.
Right.
How was that for you? Because your voice comes through. I hear your accent every time I open this book, right?
Yeah. For me, it started with, because I'm in this personal growth and self-development industry, which as an industry, I'm kind of annoyed at it. Right. I just find the whole thing like kind of nauseating, It's like, so that was like an impetus for me. I was just like, most of this shit I don't think it helps you to express your inner unicorn when your wife just left you. I don't think it helps you to be fully self-expressed when you were just told you're just being fired.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was like what was mattered to me. I was kind of pissed about it. I'm still kind of pissed at the personal growth industry. I think there's a lot of good people trying to do good things, and I think there's a lot of charlatans. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do good things, and I'm not. I don't care, and I really don't care what you think of that. I'd rather just be focused on doing good things, and good things for me is like somebody finds himself in a space in life. They read 2 pages of that book, and it gets them into a different part, a different phase. So that kind of burgeoning resentment at the state of the personal growth industry really has been my voice. Right? I kind of stick out a little bit like a sore thumb, not because I want to, but because when I looked at what I was about to do, that's what jumped out at me. So I just stepped into that. I'm like, okay, fully stepped into that. I never wanted to become the fuck guy, the guy who just says it for the hell of saying it. But I do say it in an industry where a lot of people like just couldn't be with it, like, oh my gosh, he's so coarse. And, I'm here to get over my pain. Which is fine, it's here to get over your pain, but you got to realize you're kind of inflicting upon yourself. Yeah. So I really came at it from that perspective. I really came at it like, if this is going to do anything, I'm going to do this in a way that if it fails, I wouldn't do it any differently.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So you would, basically know that you gave it your best authentic shot.
Yeah. I mean, I read this thing by I'm a big soccer guy. I don't even call it soccer. I just do that to be polite to the Americans.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
But, yeah, you're welcome. But I'm a big soccer guy, and I read this thing by a coach, and this was years ago. I read this, and it really resonated with me. And the guy said, you're either going to listen to the stands and coach for them, or you're going to do what you know to do. And if you get fired, you never want to get fired and say to yourself, shit, I should have did it the way that I thought I should have done it. And that really hung in with me. Yeah. And so I pretty much use that as, I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it how I think I should do it, which is fraught with all kinds of bullshit because I don't know what I'm doing. You know, like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm making this shit up.
You appear to be pretty good at making this shit up. I mean, the universe is providing you with evidence that at this point you actually do know what you're doing to some degree, right?
Well, I think you're in the presence of the successes.
Right.
Right. You don't get the battlefield, like the fucking dead bodies everywhere. Right.
Yeah.
And the limbs and the carnage of what it takes, of what it took to do that. Well, and I'm unabashed about that. Yeah. Right. Well, you know, like there was a point, it wasn't that long ago when I was under 2 weeks away from my next mortgage payment. I had no money in the bank, like nothing, and no money coming. There was nothing in the pipe. It's not like, well, I can do this and I can. No, it was desperate stages, you know. And I'm looking at my wife and she's looking at me and I'm, right, I don't know how I'm going to get us out of this mess. And, but I did it. Like I just said, all right, well, I'm either going to go get a job in Home Depot or I'm going to get us out of this mess. And I decided I was just going to give myself to getting us out of that particular mess, all of myself. No. And so within that 2 weeks, I produced like $10,000 worth of business, which got us through that month and, you know, gave us a little bit to address the next month. But then it was there again. And so my initial game was just, how could I have 3 months worth of bills behind me that I could relax a little? Like just 3 months, you know, 3 months worth of bills doing this stuff.
Right.
And so I that was my only intention. I had, on one hand, my big commitment to people and making a difference and how I was going to get that to pay for my cable bill. And but I realized that as long as I kept, like, I'm going to solve this problem over here, like my cable bill, and I'm going to do it by providing something for people that's worthwhile. And that was a lot of feeling my way through it, you know, like, okay, so what's worthwhile? And, you know, when you were at the level that I was at, nobody's paying for what you've got to say. Nobody's paying. No one is paying, right? And if suddenly somebody did arise, it was like, I'd pay for that. They want it for $38 a month.
Right.
Yeah. Which, and that's on the top end, right? That's right. Like on the high end.
That might get you one extra channel or two on cable.
Right, maybe. So what I really determined was it's more important for me to focus on, when it came to like what I was giving to people, that it was of high use and high quality. And I'm going to give it to them for free. I'm just going to give it to them. And I'm going to give everything that I've got to giving that to them, to just keep giving them great stuff in the way that I would. And again, I wasn't out to interrupt the flow I really wasn't out to show up in a way that was distinct from everybody else. When I authentically gave myself to giving people this stuff, I showed up different. Yeah. I just wasn't the same. Yeah. I was very distinct, you know, which is good and bad, because there's people that can't stand the way that I say it. You know, they're like, you're too this or too that or too much of this, and you need to be, you need to be less like this, and you don't have to say it that way. And I say, well, actually, I fucking do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's such an important point, right? That you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but you don't want to be everybody's cup of tea.
Well, it's important to understand that a cup of tea isn't everybody's cup of tea.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah.
So
right.
It was, and I think that's something we, if you're going into some new venture of yours, you get really nervy about where to place yourself. Like, where am I going to go? Rather than just get out there and say what you've got to say and do what you're going to do, and you will locate. You'll find where you just bed in. But you got to give up the idea that you know how to do that. Mm. You don't know how it's going to turn for you. And I don't care how fucking well informed you are, how smart you are. If anybody knew the secret to success, that book would be a constant bestseller. Yeah. So nobody really knows. But in my view, right, if you are interested in being successful in your own field, it's a relentless causing yourself to act on what you say you're passionate about.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little, because right before we started the broadcast, we were chatting about the generative nature of getting something off the ground like this. I mean, can you talk a little about that, please?
Yeah. So I have this kind of theory. I've done a lot of theorizing these last few years. I've had a lot of time to think and a lot of time to read. I like reading like old philosophy, because those men and women are way freaking smarter than I am. And they say some great things, But one of the things that the way that my venture, if you like, started to materialize in my head was, no one knows who I am, right? And that was really the first thing I had to confront. Like, nobody knows who I am. And so if you think about this in a little bit of a more kind of metaphysical way, that means who I am and what I do isn't located anywhere. Mm. It's not like where your local 7-Eleven is. It's located. And even the whole idea of 7-Eleven is located with you. Like, you drive past the 7-Eleven, you know what's in there. Whether you even shop there or not, you know what's in there. Why? Right. Because 7-Eleven won the battle for your neurons. Mm. So they won. They got a spot. Yeah. Mercedes might have a spot. Your local library's got a spot. Your local yoga place has got a spot. Starbucks has got a spot. They've all got a spot. But if you're starting a new business, you don't have that real estate in anybody's head. Right? Mm. You don't own a handful of neurons with anybody. So that means it's not whatever your venture is, it doesn't exist anywhere in the universe other than in your head. Right? That's it. So it doesn't exist anywhere. Like 7-Eleven has a manager. Like, they manage the 7-Eleven. Why? Because it already exists. It's already a thing. So somebody's managing it. Mm, they don't have to get up every day and stand outside and say, hey, we're 7-Eleven and we're here and this is what we do. And they don't have to do it. The guy just fucking works the cash register and gives you donuts, right?
Yeah, I'll bet that manager's also not waking up and thinking, what did I get myself into? 7-Eleven, right. Is this a concept that's going to work?
Right. So right now, because of the work that somebody did 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, 7-Eleven is now self-generative as a phenomenon. It generates itself. And there are people higher up the chain who manage that. Like, you should do some advertising and we should bring these new products. And they're tending to a thing that already exists. Mm. When you're in a new venture, that thing doesn't exist. So for all intents and purposes, particularly the initial stages, you are that thing. It's you. There's nothing else.
Right.
When your business wakes up in the morning, it's not your business, it's you.
Yeah.
Right?
And then I brush my business's teeth, right?
Right, but the problem is 7-Eleven is not emotionally burdened.
Mm.
It's just fucking 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
But you and I, we bring some humanity to this idea, and not their best humanity at times. So I really found like that initial kind of phase of this, like getting this going, was all about I had to be the life force of what I was building. Mm. And it was so draining, right? I mean, I'm a dad. I'm married. I have 3 children, a home. I mean, you know, car payment. I mean, and then there's this business like sitting there dead until I did anything with it.
Yeah.
Right? It's dead. No one knows about it. So I really found like that was the most draining part of it. It was like being what this thing is consistently. Mm. I had to be what it is. But there was a point, and I can't tell you when the point is, right? Because I don't think I've thought about it enough. But anyway, there was a point when it started to show signs of being itself. And it happened when like people were emailing me and asking me if I would coach them. Random people. And I'm like, oh, this is its own thing.
Now, how did they find you?
Well, that was the process, you know, like going online and setting up a website and, you know, like putting out content. But I had to keep that going because there was no force of nature locating that thing in the universe. It needed me.
Yes.
Now, I'm at the point with this business where, I mean, I still do those things, but I'm more like the manager at 7-Eleven now than, you know, I come up with new products and shit, which is a little different. But it does its thing. Like if I went away for 6 months and didn't look at my business, there'd be emails and requests, and like people are going to it, not to me.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I mean, as an example, Gary, you know, I looked on Amazon this morning, took a little peek at your book, and saw that your book has been on Amazon's top 20 list of nonfiction books read for 23 weeks. And also on, and this is important in terms of that cable bill and getting those boys fed, right? Also, it's been on the top 20 list of Amazon nonfiction books sold for 23 weeks. So, I mean, that really speaks to what you're talking about. If you just decided to go make potato chips for the rest of your life, your book is now got a life of its own.
It's got its own like location in the universe. No, but here's what I want people to get. That process of getting that to do that, or my coaching business or whatever, to get it to do what it does, was fucking horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the most draining, you know, like saturated with self-doubt and resignation. And I mean, just all of that. And that internal dialogue was screaming, right? But I really, it was when I was in that space, by the way, that I realized what was happening here. Like I had to be the business. I realized that, and it was so much effort, so much work for nothing, not a little in return, nothing in return, nothing. Nobody's like, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. No one was saying that. But I really got like, that was what I needed to do. I needed to be what this thing is gonna be. And I'm still doing that, by the way. There's still like the next thing that I have in mind that doesn't exist, that I currently have to be what that thing is until that thing becomes what it is, and so on and so forth. And so I built these pieces to become like satellites, and I keep building these little satellites and then being what they need until they can exist on their own. And then, so that's kind of like how my business is built. So I've got online courses, I've got books, I have a very small coaching business, I do speaking engagements. Like all of that, all of those are satellites that don't exist. I need to tend to them like they're their own business, and I need to build them like they're their own business. And if that thing pays me $30 a month, good. Now it's got a toehold. And I can focus on that and do something with that. And then the more they start to, they're like little magnets. The more people start saying, well, what is that? And what does it do? And how does it work? And how can I have it? And what do I? And, you know, even like I've got merchandising on my website, you know, you can buy an Unfuck Yourself t-shirt. I'm not really I'm not intending on really like becoming a millionaire making t-shirts. but all those little things, those little satellites require attention, focus, and energy. You don't just flippantly do them. You need to say, okay, how do I make this thing a thing now?
Yeah.
And that's been my whole approach. I'm willing to be that thing until it can be itself, for however long that takes. And you know, like sometimes it doesn't pay much, but then you don't have to make it a big feature of your business. It's just a little part, and then you can go off and create something else. And you know, and then the more you do that, and the more you get into it, the more you build it, and the more you start to open your eyes up to the potential that exists, right? The German philosopher Martin Heidegger said our lives are filled with potential that we're mostly ignoring.
Wow.
So I tend to like ask me, what am I ignoring? What am I not paying attention to?
Yeah. Well, you know, I will never forget, Gary, you and I were on the phone a while back. Was it Hurricane Harvey had?
Yeah, some crazy ass hurricane.
That crazy ass hurricane. You live in Florida near the water. Yeah. And I will never forget, we were on the phone and you were driving back from wherever you had fled to with your family back to your house, didn't even know what kind of condition your house was in. And you were on the phone with me sharing about the journey that you'd been through. So first of all, I was really struck by, well, this is so quintessentially Gary. He's not driving and, you know, just obsessing about my basement, my house, my this, my that. You know, you're like talking about what's going on, and okay, and when I get home, I'll look and see what happened, right? And it turns out you were in pretty good shape from that, right? I was. Yeah, so good for that. So it wouldn't have made much difference to worry about it anyway. But I recall the story you were telling me that I'd love for you to share with our audience here about how you decided, you know what, I need an agent. And then, and then the whole publishing thing. But could you share a little about how you went about that? Yeah.
So
it like I said,
I'm a novice.
Right.
I think I put this quote up on Facebook a while back. It said, I don't enjoy failure, but I'm not afraid of it. Right. So I think I pretty much live by that. I mean, a few other things too, but I think that's important. But really, it was like the weirdest, you know, my business was doing okay. The bills were getting paid. The kids are happy. And my wife was relatively happy with where we're at. You could see there's progress, you know, things were moving along. And I had what you would call a successful coaching business, you know, it was 6 figures and, you know, doing well. And but the book was starting to kind of gather some pace. However, for some reason or another, the email on my website had been down for 4 months and no one noticed.
Ouch.
Which was like, what the hell,
that's
right?
One of those, moments, right?
You're right. Right. So then we put it up. We like got it all sorted and we put it up. And typically, by the way, I never blame anybody. It's my own responsibility for not making sure that was on.
It would be tempting, though, wouldn't it?
It would be tempting, but then I'd just be like every other asshole, and I don't want to do that, right? I want to be my own special brand of asshole.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So but within a week, like we got an email from this big publisher, one of the biggest in the world, right? And they said, hey, you know, we're interested in your book. We've noticed me doing pretty good, and we'd like to talk to you about it. And I said, okay. So I got on the phone with them, and they said, yeah, you know, this book's kind of good and it's doing well, and, you know, we'll get back in touch with you in about a week or so. So I'm like, well, hold on a minute. You know, by this point, it sold maybe 20,000 copies. I'm like, whoa, I'm way out of my freaking depth, you know. So I just Googled who are the top agents, right? I used the internet. And you got to get, like, agents get, I mean, a litany of material thrown at them.
Oh, yeah.
And most of the big agents are not interested in my genre. They're just not interested, right? They don't want to hear somebody's story about how they turned their life around to give to somebody else in the growth industry. They're just not interested. They want fiction, right? But anyway, I saw this list of agents, and I thought, I'm just going to email them. I'm going to email these agents. I'm going to say, hey, my name's Gary John Bishop. This is my website. I released my book 4 or 5 months ago. It sold this amount of copies. I just got an email from this big publisher. What do you think? Right? And that was basically it. It was very brief, very like. So then I got like a response within 2 minutes from one of those agents, right? Like within 2 minutes. I'm not saying 2 minutes like 2 minutes, no, within 2 literal minutes.
Wow.
Saying, hey, let's talk.
Wow.
And so I said, sure. So within 12 minutes, we were talking. And they said, I will totally represent you, and I'll get you a deal for this book. And I said, well, I'd like some time to kind of find out, like what do agents do? And I need to understand it. And she said, fine.
Now
and then
I have to ask, was there any element of playing a little hard to get? What was driving that?
No, I just wanted to make a solid choice.
Right.
Right. So I actually only emailed 5 of them, and I got an email back from everybody wanting to talk to me. And they all wanted to talk to me, which was, but again, it wasn't like I'm rolling around in my Bentley or something. I'm still like paying bills month to month, And I got on the phone with them. I got on the phone with each of them, and I started to ask them questions like, what do you do? How do you do it? How does this work? What would you do with my book? Which was really critical to me. Like, what would you do with it? How would you do it? And I took 2 weeks to do it. And I eventually settled on the first agent. Eventually, the one that called me back within 2 minutes. I've got a nose for authenticity. And this person just screamed authenticity at me. And, you know as well as I do, given the kind of work that you've done, the work that I've done in our lives, you kind of get pretty reliable for authenticity. Mm-hmm. And this person screamed authenticity at me. Luckily, she was one of the top agents in the face of the planet, which was good. Yeah. So
it's probably partly why she is one of the top agents.
Possibly, right? So then I just said, all right, let's do it. So I contacted that big agent, that big publisher, and I said, hey, just to let you know, I'm now being represented by this person. That within 30 minutes of that publisher contacted the agent and said, we'll have an offer to you by this afternoon.
Damn.
So I'm like, wow.
That's a good day. That's a good day.
That is a good day. So they made an offer. My agent at the time was like, now let's put this thing at the auction. So we put it at the auction. We got a ton of responses back. And then eventually we settled on Harper One, which is an imprint of HarperCollins. And one of the reasons why I went with them as a publisher is because they had no interest in doing anything to the book. They had no interest in let's add pictures or this book needs to be longer or let's change the cover or nothing. They just said, let's take the book and we're just going to take it off the market and we're going to re-release it with all that we can give it.
Wow.
And we actually took it off the market and re-released it 8 weeks later. It wasn't like this big long period of time. And, then that's when I did the audio book. I did all of that and I recorded the audio book myself. The audio book is probably, for me anyway, been the most surprising. The audio book, I was nominated for an Audie for Audio Book of the Year.
Oh, wow.
It currently is in the top 15 audiobooks, has been since the day it was released, which is now a year. The book's been out a year on a major publisher.
Wow.
And And, you know, it's been remarkable, really, like, to watch the book do its thing, you know, to kind of be present to all and see it do its thing. And then I've really enjoyed this brilliant relationship with my agent. I mean, I've just like, I never, even saying my agent seems weird to me, you know. Nobody thinks, yeah, I'm going, yes, I have an agent. I mean, I wasn't. It's just so weird to me. Anyway, so the kind of, the environment that I sometimes find myself in is a little strange. But anyway, so I've really enjoyed this brilliant relationship with my agent and a brilliant relationship with my publisher. Like, they're just fantastic. They're understanding, and they're really interested in what I have to say. And I don't mean like my opinions. I mean, they're really interested in me communicating my kind of brand of things, and that they are in service of that. And that's been just phenomenal. The publishing industry, by the way, I've found is, because I used to be a musician, it's way less fucked up than the music industry. There's actually a lot of really decent people in publishing, like fundamentally just decent people, you know.
Yeah.
And I found that going through the process, you know, when we put the book out for auction. I mean, you have a 1 hour call with every publisher. We did that for a week, for hours on end with all the publishers. And they were great. They were like, and even if we don't win the bid, you know, we just wish you all the best. We think your book's awesome. And
yeah.
like, what the hell, you know, like nobody's stabbing each other in the eyeball. This is great, you know.
Yeah.
So it's been a great process.
Billy says the audio version is amazing. You know, Billy. Hi, Billy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and here's where to buy the t-shirt. She gave us a link. There's the Gary merch right there. Okay.
Right. Good.
Thanks, Billy.
Yeah.
So Gary, you know, talking about, you know, the publisher's support of your ideas, your philosophy, actually. In fact, it's billed as urban philosophy, right?
Right.
Where did that come from? That moniker?
Yeah. So a lot of Eastern philosophy is like really respected in the East. So people use it. And they don't in the West, really. Western philosophers don't really have that kind of presence in our culture. And I have an opinion about that. My opinion is because we're still arguing about it. So one of the things that I think doesn't work about Western philosophy is it's all just about how accurate your theory is. So philosophy is about proving whether it's true or not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Right or wrong, right?
Right. But it's I've even had people come to me and say, I really read your book and I can see nuances of this philosophy and that philosophy, but I take issue with la 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 la, which is the problem with Western philosophy, in my opinion. It's more interested in being academically virtuous. My view in Western philosophy is how fucking useful is it? Like, I don't care whether this fits with dualism or epistemology, or I don't care. Like, how useful is it?
Yeah.
So I'll look at philosophy from the standpoint of how could somebody use this? And how can I give this to somebody in a way that they could use it? How can I communicate this in a way to people that they'd be like, awesome, I just got divorced. My life has been a train wreck. And that gives me something to hang my hat on, right? So I look in lots of different areas of philosophy. And that's where this whole urban thing came from, because it's the kind of philosophy that you could stand on the street and talk to somebody about, and you wouldn't sound like your mouth is filled with gumballs.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh yeah, like, you know, I realized this morning that I was in a conversation with my husband or my wife or my sister, and I realized like all I was doing was just in my own head about what I thought they should do. And that was what I was upset about. I was upset about what they should do. And it wasn't really what they'd done. So to me, that's like pretty cool to get those insights for yourself. Like, right, you know, like my life isn't going terribly. I just think it is. Well, that's pretty useful, right? If I look at my reality, I'm actually doing fine, but I just feel like I'm doing terribly. Oh, how I feel and reality aren't the same. No. They're not the freaking same. So, so that's what my urban philosophy really is about. It's about communicating some really valuable and powerful ideas. And sometimes they're my ideas, but in a way that people who typically wouldn't put their nose in a book about philosophy would get something. I love it when somebody says, I don't normally read books, but I read yours. I love it when somebody says that, right? Yeah. And I got something valuable. That's awesome. And then, you know, I always laugh when somebody says, oh, this is basic stuff. I love it when people say that. Like, clearly, if you're so advanced, you would see that this is actually the juice. This is where it's all at. It's all in this kind of the basic things, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's my take on
it. I love the 7. What would you call them?
They're assertions.
Assertions. I was going to say rules to live by, but that didn't sound very Gary. So So is it all right if I share what they are? Yeah. Okay. And then I'd like you, Gary, little heads up. I want you to think about which one we want to talk about that you think would make the biggest difference for people in the audience, right?
Sure. I already know, but it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So here's what they are, but buy the book so you can get everything between these lines. So 1 is I am willing. 2, I am wired to win. 3, I got this. 4, I embrace the uncertainty. 5, I am not my thoughts. I am what I do. 6, I am relentless. 7, I expect nothing and accept everything. Okay, so there you go. The secret to life. Now,
all right.
Now, go ahead, riff.
Well, I think the thing that really, the one that I'm most fond of is the first one. So it's a statement where you assert something, where you literally just pep up in a day and you state something about yourself. Not an affirmation like I'm good enough or something, which some people buy into affirmations. Most people don't, because it doesn't deal with why you're having to do that.
Oh, right. The little troll talk.
Right. It's kind of like sticky. It's kind of like, you know, you found a wallet and there's $50 in it and you're wondering whether you should keep it or not.
It's not really mine, but I can pretend it is, right?
But it looks a bit beat. There's no ID in it. Anyway, so should I? You feel bad as you're spending the money or some shit like that. But anyway, the one that I always choose is I am willing, right? I am willing. Now, an assertion is when you actually pep up in a moment of the day and say, I don't care how I feel. I don't care what's happened. I don't care what I'm about to do or what I think of what I'm about to do. I'm just going to create for myself right now, being willing. Like, I'm willing. Now, I had this real big, there was a lot. I could have written a book about being willing, right? I could have written 75,000 words on being willing. There's so much to say about that. But willingness is an ever expanding and contracting state for a person. So when you're willing to do something, you just give yourself to it. And all you really need is a little bit of willingness to be willing. Right? You just need a little bit. You don't even need to be like, oh yeah, I'm totally doing this shit. You know, you don't need that. It's just a little glimpse of willingness for yourself. Now, like I said, but it's personally generated. All your emotional states are personally generated. It's not happening to you. Right? I mean, I might not want to go to the gym, but I might ask myself, well, am I willing to get in my car and drive in that direction? Well, I'm willing to do that. Right. Well, am I willing to park here outside the gym? I'm willing to do that. Okay. Am I willing to open the door and head towards the gym door?
Yeah.
I think I can muster that up. I can get. Am I willing to step over to that machine and do this 10 times? Okay, I'm going to do it. Am I willing to go another 5? So it's like this state where you break into and chip away at what you typically would pull back from, which is really powerful when you get like willingness. Willingness then becomes, when you look at your whole life from the perspective of willingness, you'll see that there's nothing you can't do. There's only what you're willing to do and not willing to do. And if you actually started to engage with your whole life from that perspective, like, oh shit, this isn't happening because I'm not willing to do it. That's why it's not going the way that I thought it would, right? It's not about that I can. I'm actually not willing to deal with myself and deal with this situation to cause this to go in a different way. So, and then that you'll notice like your internal dialogue is you can't do it, or I can't do it, or it's too much, it's confusing, or I don't know enough, or la 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 la. But I'm not willing to deal with that. I'm not willing to deal with that stuff. So that's one side of willingness, and I actually talk about this in the book too. There's this other side of willingness called your unwillingness, which can have a really powerful impact on your experience of being alive. Unwillingness, because if you flip it and you ask yourself and you say to yourself, I'm unwilling to live the life that I have. I know that ignites something in you, like a resolve.
Kind of an like enough already moment, basically.
Right. And I'm unwilling to live with the body I have. I'm just unwilling to do that. I'm sitting here on the couch and this show's about to come on Netflix, and I know I need to get over to that exercise machine, and I'm unwilling to live with this body. So off I go. Or I'm unwilling to spend another day with this book unwritten, or that idea expressed. I'm unwilling to live another day without my website or my da-da-da-da-da-da. Like I start to deal with and see life in terms of willingness and unwillingness. And I'm telling you, look, willingness for me has been the heartbeat of the breakthroughs that I've had in my life. Like I've been able to bring forth a modicum of willingness that's caused me to deal with myself in a moment of time. And that's all it takes. It just takes that moment of like, nope, right? Like the alarm goes off at 6 a.m. My body doesn't want to get up, but I am unwilling to lie here for another moment. I apply it. And you could take any one of those statements, by the way. If you diligently apply any one of those to your life, you'll change your life. They're not just flippant. They're all states. They all demand something of you that you don't demand of yourself. And that's where I think personal growth really makes a difference for people, is when you fully engage with it. Whatever you're engaging with demands you not to be you. And you got to you're the fucking problem.
Now, when you say it demands you not to be you, can you say a little more about that? What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty simple. You know, the limits of your life are self-inflicted. It's not happening to you. How do you know that?
But it feels so much. It looks like it is, Gary.
I know, it freaking does, right? Like, but I was fired. I know, but you took that job.
Oh, okay.
Right. But that person cheated on me. I know, but you fucking married them.
Yeah, right.
Right. You got to keep getting it. Why? I keep putting myself in these things. There's this, I used to hear this quite a lot. People feel like they attract shit. No, you don't. You hunt it down. You find shit. You're like, let me go after this. So you got to get like, you are a walking, talking limitation. You limit you. Wow. That's not happening around you. You constrain you every day. You talk yourself out of ideas that other people made a living out of or lots of money out of. You're doing it. You are I had this idea a while back. I'm still toying with it, but I'll give it to you anyway. So I had this idea that human beings are just filters. Like they just filter everything. Filter sunlight, water, food, and conversation. So it just passes through them. And so you're hearing things and seeing things, and they're coming in, and then you filter most of it out, and then you talk, and whatever you've filtered out, whatever you're left with, that's your life.
Oh, wow.
So it might be an idea to kind of understand what the filter is. Like, what is it that exists there that is dismissing some of this stuff? The actual quote that Heidegger said was, your life is filled with potential that you're either adopting as your own or you're ignoring it. And your life is a function of what you've adopted as your own. And your potential exists in what it is you've ignored. And so you need to start dealing with this thing that you've put together. That's actually the problem. It's not something else. And it's a function of how you hear it, how you see it, how you interact with it, how you engage with your life. And it's tricky because the thing that you're trying to look at is doing the looking.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a problem, right? And it's human beings, like, we can't see it because we've made it okay. So you've made your shit okay. You don't have a problem with it. It's like, oh, it's just being me. I'm just being myself. I know, but you're an asshole.
Yeah.
At what point do you realize, like, your life is going the way it's going because you're doing it?
Yeah.
Now, but not like get that in a way that disempowers you. Get that in a way that goes like ding, 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 ding. Yeah. Like, if I've built this machine, if I've built this filter, if I've built this thing, then I can build something else. And then you'd start to make that your business. Like, how do I question myself? How do I empower myself? How do I go beyond what I didn't think was a limit? I thought it was how things are, that I've come to discover was in fact a limitation. People don't exist. People don't live their lives like, they don't live their life like they've got some self-limiting belief. I've heard you hear that phrase a lot, like self-limiting beliefs. If the moment you discover a self-limiting belief, it's not one.
Oh, right. Okay.
Everything else is a self-limiting belief. Everything else. So everything you're doing is by virtue of some limit that to you isn't a limit. It's how things actually are.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually knew your self-limiting beliefs, you wouldn't do what you do.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I talk to, they wonder if what they have could turn into something. And by turn into something, I mean, is there an audience out there for whom this would not only be of interest, but it could make a difference? In other words, okay, there's the school of thought, oh, we're all special little snowflakes. We all have our unique gifts, right? But then there's the wondering, well, is my unique gift the kind of unique gift that once expressed could make a difference on a big scale, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to those folks?
I wouldn't be focusing on that. See, I've never really been, and certainly in my own venture, right? I'm not out to change the world. I'm just out to change you. That's it. That became a living for me has been awesome. But if I focused on that becoming a living for me, I'm already fucked. Because I don't have my attention on you. So it really can be a balance, because I got to keep this, like, my cable bill in mind. But for me, what I'm saying and what I'm doing trumps the cable bill eventually. Yeah. Like, I'm willing to not pay it this month to say what needs to get said here. But if you only see, it's really, I guess what I'm saying here is your attention has got to be on what you're saying. That's it. Yeah. And you got to keep saying it and saying it and saying it and saying it. And if it makes a difference for one person, then job done. If it makes a difference for 10 people, then job done. And in that process, it's kind of like you're finding what works, what doesn't work. But the reality is, look, I mean, your chances of being a best-selling, and I don't say this to kill somebody off, but you got to get your perspective right. Your chances of being a best-selling author are the equivalent of being attacked by a polar bear and a brown bear on the same day.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I want you to get, when I went about my book, I didn't have the intention of this becoming a bestseller. It's nice that it did, but you know what? If it didn't, my next book would be out now.
Yeah.
And if that didn't sell well, then I'd be doing the next book.
Yes.
Right. And so that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to have this be what my life's about, you know, and I was pretty certain, I guess, at some degree that I could pay my cable bill with it, but I didn't have any aspirations beyond much of that. It was more like, I'll do this. And then being fertile and being willing to kind of put my ideas out there and they go for it. And, you know, I've put ideas out there and they bombed and I've pulled them back. And I've put other ones out there and I was tanked. I'll pull that one back. But it's been it's like the fascination of my life. It's what I'm doing. There's no going back for me. I can't go back. I can't go back to doing what I did. It's not a viable option. So I got to make this work to the degree that I can make it work. I will say this, and I think this is important. This was important for me to get. I was either going to give all my attention to a kind of small game which would draw away from something bigger. And the dance for me at the time was, am I being fantastical? Or is there some legitimacy to what I'm saying here, what I'm doing? So that's why I wanted to write a book, but I didn't have in mind a bestseller. I just wanted to write a good book, which was a big leap for me at that time. And then once the book was out, it was like, well, how can I sell it? And how do I get it up the rankings? And then I started to get into those other domains, those other paradigms of how to grow it and expand it. But I learned this hard lesson as a musician. I set out to be a famous musician. It was very fucking disappointing, and my music paid the price for it.
Yeah, I really get that. You know, I'm working on a continuum of the different places someone can be, from, you know, stuck in their head with their thought leadership to all the way at the other end, somebody who's really out there and making a huge difference. And a theory of mine that I'd like to run past you is that love has a lot to do with it. And that's kind of what I'm hearing in what you're saying, Gary, about having your attention out, you know, with that person, as opposed to your cable bill or your self-esteem or whatever. Yeah.
I think it's good. I think what you're saying there's a lot of validity in it. My only concern, and this is with everything that I say, am I sidelining someone from what's going to actually make the difference? So sometimes we find ourselves like, I need to work on my confidence.
Right.
Which doesn't have a lot to do with flipping open your laptop.
Right.
But it seems like it does.
Yes,
Right.
It does.
It seems like, well, it stands to reason if I'm confident, I'll write good shit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe, but maybe not, you know. So I'm always wary of, am I putting something in that's going to, somebody will now go to work on that and I'll take them in a whole other fucking direction.
Right.
So it's not like something like love, the love of what you're doing, your love of people. It's not like those things aren't important. You got to really look at, well, what is it that's going to move the chains here? What's actually going to do it? And whereas there's a thing in the book where I say people want to be driven. They want to be chauffeured through life. And they want to be chauffeured by a feeling. So I want to do what I want to do, but I want to feel awesome about doing it. Right? So I want to be right. I want to be certain, or I want to be this, or I want to be that.
Yeah.
And then so they go to work on that.
Yeah.
Because they think, well, it's important that I get the chauffeur lined up. And it's not. What's important is that you move the fucking car.
But Gary, I want to marinate in the feel goods.
I know, and I want it too, but there's just too many days. Look, I mean, the reality is you can feel good with a half decent martini. Right. But that doesn't make won't make you more money though.
No.
You'll just feel better about not making money.
Right. So much for the happy hour answer.
Right. Or a slice of pizza, whatever your thing might be.
Right.
So, but I think it's really important for you to actually look at the mechanics. Like, what are the mechanics of what I'm out to do? And by the way, a lot of it for me was stuff I didn't want to do, like reading. I didn't want to fucking read. I mean, come on. I want to talk. But I did have to read, and I did have to educate myself. And I didn't, I'm a high school graduate. I didn't do shit. I didn't go to college. I didn't do any of that stuff. But I've really had to throw myself into the deep end and read some really challenging materials and really question myself and be with myself and then read stuff that conflicted with what I thought was true. And like, how do I get my head around that? And how do I use it? Because it sounds pretty nice. So it's a struggle with what you want to do or how you want to feel, and looking at, well, what are the items that are actually going to move this forward? Which sometimes, by the way, is I need to read more, or I need to be with this idea more, or I need to, but again, you can't ruminate or marinate too much in some of that stuff. You ought to keep presencing and moving your stuff forward and getting yourself out there. And then ultimately people are going to judge it, but that's the point. It's for people to judge it. Which is hard when you're creative, because it's a problem with being creative. You're creative, you want to create, but you want to be judged favorably.
Yeah, it's fair to say.
I know, but you won't be. It's like somebody once said, you can be the biggest, most luscious, juiciest peach in the world, and there's always somebody that doesn't like peaches.
Silly them, right?
Right. So
they miss out on the peaches.
Right, they do.
Gary, this has been really, really great. I thank you so much for generously sharing your time, but more to the point, sharing yourself, your story, what you deal with, what you've dealt with. And, it's really, really inspiring. And it's just also really fun to get to be with you again.
Yeah. Awesome. It's been great to be with you. And, I invite anybody who's watching this, if you heard something that triggered something for you and kind of gave you a little bit of impetus, you got to drive a bus through that thing now. You got to jump all over that and make that work for you. Yeah. Because, again, as I say in the book, the cavalry ain't coming. You're the cavalry.
That's right. But there is help available. There is also help available. So
that is, and you should use it.
That's right. Now, where can people find more about you, Gary?
You can look on my website, garyjohnbishop.com. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. You can, on the website, you can actually sign up to be part of what I call Unfuck Nation. And I send you newsletters and videos. It doesn't cost you any money. And it's for people that are committed to taking their lives on. So every so often I'll send you something that's designed to cause you to think and cause you to move your life in new directions. Personal growth and personal development doesn't have to cost you a lot of money, but it will cost you some thinking. And, you know, if you're interested in developing yourself and developing your life, then you're going to have to think. You're going to have to give up what you think you already know and start to venture into the unknown territory and start to realize on your potential.
Yeah, that's great. And for those of you who could use a champion, guide, mentor with this whole process of getting yourself more visible, you can find me at itstimeformoxie.com. I work with people individually. Sometimes they do one-day intensives. So, you know, it's time to move on that. It's time for Moxie. Let's chat. So, all right, Gary, we'll have to do this again sometime, I hope.
Absolutely. And it's been great being with you today, Deb.
Oh, this was wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Thank you.